Hello, hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome to the Standards Pavilion, brought to you by IEC, ISO and ULSE Standards Engagement. So this is the first session of the Pavilion. So to begin with, we thought it's important to really explain to you about what standards are. So why this is important, how does it support innovations, regulations, and also the climate objectives. So this is why we started with this session. So after this session, we're going to do 2 more runs. So to learn more about what we're doing, please visit our website, standardspavilion.org. So let me introduce myself. My name is Colin Low. I'm the Regional Director of UL Standards Engagement. So I come from Singapore. So to explain to you about what standardization is, so I thought it's good to go back to the history, because there's so many things that we can learn from history. Right, we've gone through so much, so it makes a lot of sense that we learn from what we have done before, so we don't reinvent the wheel. So at the modern history of innovation, so we have done a lot, starting from the water power, textile, iron, to steam power, and rail and steel. So back then, if you can observe, the cycle of innovation is longer. The impact is not as big. And also, the reach is not as wide, right? But when we come to, so it gives us more time to adapt to the unintended hazards brought by innovation. But when we come to electrification, which is in the second industrial revolution, so we start to realize that, hang on, this is going to catch, it's going to bring a lot of unexpected hazards, especially in terms of fire. So this is why how we started. So back in 1894, which is 130 years ago, so that time electricity was completely new. Then there's a lot of innovators, they actually leverage this technology to create a lot of applications. So take the light bulb as an example. So the first light bulb was invented during that time. But the road from 1 light bulb to 1 million light bulb, right? So how do we know that it doesn't cause unintended issues? So that's why back in 1894, so the founder of UL, formerly known as the Underwriters Laboratories, was approached by the industry of insurance to really ask to create a solution. So back then, the proposal from the founder, which is William Henry Merrill, so he said that the first thing is we have to do research to help us to quantify what are the potential hazards of new innovation. Then after this research, so it doesn't guarantee that the solution can be used by all the different stakeholders. So the second thing is we have to form a technical committee. So we find a different stakeholders group to build a consensus so that this outcome can be used by different stakeholders. And number 3 is conformity assessment. Right, because we cannot guarantee that the product will automatically meet the standards. So somebody has to conduct, to check, to assess the conformity to the standards. So this is how UL was founded. So right now, there are 3 UL organizations. So the first one is the UL Research Institute. Number 2 is UL Standards Engagement, which is where I'm from. So these 2 continue to be the non-profit organizations. And the third one, which is conformity assessment, has now evolved into a commercial company called UL Solutions. So back then, with this approach, which we call the safety science approach, so we managed to help innovators to overcome challenges and scale innovation. So fast forward today, so is standardization still critical? So the answer is yes. Right, back then, if we think about that, the role of standardization is really to address the safety hazard, to help us to build trust or restore trust in innovation, so we are able to scale it and to improve our lives. But after that, take a look at the innovation cycle. So there's some observations. Number 1, the cycle gets shorter and shorter. So we have less time to adapt to the unintended consequences of innovation. And number 2 is the impact gets bigger and bigger. So if we don't act fast, we're going to suffer. So number 3 is the reach gets wider, because now the world is much more globalized. So what happened in one country, a new innovation, is going to spread to other countries very quickly. So this is why we need even more standardization. So from the UL's history, so we started with UL 10A, which is fire door, because to really help us to save life, and then to adapt to electrification, the first thing is we need to have fire door so we can block the fire, right? Then over time, to support petrochemicals, so we developed a standard called UL94. So that is flammability of plastics. Because plastic is flammable, so compared to legacy materials, it catches fire much easily. So we need to find a solution to test, to make sure that the use of plastic does not cause more fire. And so UL 1642, this is the first ever standard for lithium battery. It was published in 1985, even before Sony commercialized lithium batteries. And also more recently, we are into new technologies. So in 2020, we developed a standard, which is called UL 4600 for autonomous driving, as well as UL 3600 for circular economy. So when we develop all these standards, so we make sure that we also work with different standards organizations, especially ISO and IEC. That's why for UL 3600, so we take reference from ISO 59000 series of standards published by ISO TC 323 to make sure that we are coherent. So the next slide, I want to further unpack. So why standardization can be a good tool to help us to produce sound solution to address the global challenges. It's really because of all the key principles. So the first one is transparency. So standardization is developed in a way where we are able to view what's happening. Right, so all the stakeholders are supposed to have the right to understand. Right, so what is being discussed? What are the new proposals? Right, so that's the first one about transparency. So this is common to most of the standards organizations, not just UL standards engagement, but ISO and IEC as well. Because these are all the principles derived by the World Trade Organizations. So it's called the Principle for International Standards Development. Number two is openness. So we're supposed to allow stakeholders' participation as widely as practically possible so that we can hear from all the stakeholders, right? So that standards can be applied across the board. And next one is impartiality. So we don't want to develop a standard that can only be used by policymakers, because sometimes the policymaker might want products to be safer with more requirements, which hurts innovation and businesses. So we also want to find a solution here from both sides to make sure that standards can really meet the requirements and goals by all different parties. Number four is actually consensus. So standards are supposed to be based on consensus. Right, so in UL's approach, so we have balloting, but in the meantime, we also want to make sure that we collect all the inputs and comments. So, comments, every single comment has to be addressed before we can close any standards proposal. Then the next one is about effectiveness and relevant. So that's why I mentioned about we are working with our sibling organizations, especially UL Research Institute. So UL Research Institutes conduct all the safety science, all the research that focus on safety hazard. Right, so this is science-based, because physics is physics. Whether it's in Azerbaijan, whether it's in London, Paris, or in the US, it is supposed to be uniform. So we want to base on science when we develop standards to make sure that it is actually effective and relevant. And the next one is coherent. And this is why today I'm very proud that we are doing this pavilion together with ISO and IEC to make sure that we work together with different standards organizations so we don't create differing requirements and cause the confusion to the market and also to policymakers. This is a very critical principle to UL standards engagement. And last but not least, development dimension. Because we have to understand that a lot of developing countries, they are really struggling to keep up with the new standards development and also understanding what standards are and getting involved in standards development. That's why we have to be more inclusive. So for UL standards engagement, we put a lot of effort where we visit developing countries, providing capacity building to these countries to make sure that we bring them up to speed then we can leave no one behind. In the meantime, we also worked very closely with ISO and IEC, participating in the capacity building activities to support these global priorities. So with that, I just want to summarize by using the chart on the right side, which is a balance. Right. So standardization, if we do it properly, so it was supposed to help us to meet the legitimate objective of safety and resilience. In the meantime, we can also balance the priority of international trade and also innovation. Right. So this helps us to enhance the regulatory efficiency. So standards can be used by regulators in the regulation or in policy making. By doing that, we are able to adopt more clean technologies and help us to achieve sustainability. With that, I just want to conclude my presentation. So if you're interested to know more about UL standards engagement, please contact me with the contact information here. So before I end, just to also share with you that we would like to hear from you, to learn from your comments how we can improve the pavilion. So please scan the QR code here. I think I'll just pause here for 2 seconds or 5 seconds to make sure that everyone pull out your phone and provide your feedback. Okay, so I guess I'll also stop here. So, and open for questions. Is there any question for me? Anyone? Oh, yes, please, Andy.
Could you tell us a little bit more about how UL and UL standards fit with the other standards ecosystem and other standards bodies?
Okay, thanks for this great question, Andy. So, okay, this one, I need to go in to explain the different standard system. So, ISO and IEC is a platform where there are national body, which is the national standards body across the world, to participate in the system. So this is actually a system which encourage and also facilitate consensus across the world to find a solution, right? And so in UL's system, so we don't have the national body. So what we do is we allow the participants or the stakeholders to get involved in our standards development directly. So these two systems are different. So in this case, we recognize that in UL standards system, so our consensus is not as wide as ISO and IEC, right? But it allows us to be more nimble, right? To really tackle different challenges. So, but there are pros and cons. That's why, in our opinion, we believe that to make sure that we all work together to find a solution, we need partnership. So we have to work together. This is very critical. All right, so I hope that answered the question.
Thanks for your presentation. My name is Markus. I'm a professor of political science in Germany. 2 questions. First one, ISO and other standard setting bodies are more and more moving into setting standards for processes and much less for products. Is this something UL is doing as well? And my second question, maybe a little bit more challenging. We live more and more in a world of standards. There are ever more standards, we're ever more fine-grained. But do we in the end have content? And this, I think, is particularly interesting for climate change. We are standardizing everything, but maybe we are not making real progress, question mark.
Okay, thanks for the question. So about the first one, yeah, in UL standards engagement, so we focus more on product standards. Right, so a majority of our standards is really about product safety. And also recently, we also have more standards on sustainability. So we don't have a lot of standards on process, but we do have some standards on, that is focusing more on the test method. Right, so this is also another differences. So we also don't have standards for management system. That's why in the world, there are a lot of different standards organizations. So every standards organization have our own stakeholders and also our own different specializations. Right, so this is where we specialize in. So we recognize that, and that's why we also contribute and support other different standards organizations. Right, and and that's also the similar answer to your second question. Right, because there are really a lot of, the world is getting more and more complex. There are a lot of compounding priorities. Right, so that's why I think we require different standards organizations to try different things. That is critical. It's going to create some confusion. Yeah, I recognize that. This is why we want to call for more partnership. All the standards organizations should work together, right, so that we can help to minimize the confusion to the market. I hope that answered the question. Is there any more questions? If no question, one more question?
Colin, Adam Stingemore from Australia. Thank you for the presentation, and it's great to see UL, ISO and IEC working together. If you were to look forward 5 years, Colin, ahead, what do you think collaboration will look like then? Will it look similar to today or different?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Adam. I cannot speak for ISO and IEC, but I can only speak for ULSE and engagement. So we are expanding, right? Because we are given a mandate to really grow, right? To invest more into developing the right standards, right? In the right area, to create the right impact, especially in an area where we know that we are leading, right? So we're expanding. In the meantime, from a geographic standpoint, so we're also expanding. This is why I'm from Singapore, so we are growing our footprint in Asia as well. All right, so moving forward in 5 years' time, so I believe we're going to evolve to make sure that we have more support to address the gaps in ISO and IEC. Right, so we can contribute to the system. Yeah, that's how I would view it. So in short, we have to do even more. Any more questions? If not, I'll just conclude by sharing the partners for this pavilion. So it's not just IEC, ISO, and UL standards engagement. So we also have other organizations, which is on the screen. So thanks to all the organizations for supporting the pavilion, and thanks for your participation.